Hello and welcome back to the Newsmax Daily for Thursday, June 6, 2024. June 6th is a big day in world history and American history. 80 years ago today, June 6th, 1944, thousands of American and Allied forces arrived on the beaches of Normandy, France, in Operation Overlord, known as the D-Day invasion that led to the end of World War II. More than 4,400 soldiers lost their lives on that day alone, D-Day. President Biden and other dignitaries, as well as some of the last surviving World War II veterans in their late 90s, some well over 100 years old, are being honored in France today.
I can't believe the turnout and generosity of all the people. God bless everyone.
God bless them indeed. I did see on X yesterday, there were some posts of people saying that our veterans are getting more love in France than they get here at home, which may or may not be true. It is kind of sad, but you cannot give those folks that are still with us enough love. And President Biden spoke at the ceremony this morning.
The hour had nearly come. Monday, June 5th, 1944. The evil of Hitler's Third Reich was devastating the world. Nazi Germany had subjugated the once free nations of Europe through brute force, lies, and twisted ideology of racial superiority. Millions of Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Millions of others killed by bombs, bullets, bloody warfare. Hitler and those with him thought democracies were weak, that the future belonged to dictators. Here, on the coast of Normandy, the battle between freedom and tyranny would be joined. Here, on that June morning, the testing was at hand. President Macron, Mrs. Macron, Secretary Austin, Secretary Blinken, distinguished guests, most of all, our honored veterans who met that test at the ages, a test of ages to that moment, 80 years ago. 80 years ago today. On behalf of the American people, and as Commander-in-Chief, it's the highest honor to be able to salute you here in Normandy once more. All of you, God love you.
President Biden will travel to Paris from Normandy later today. His trip to France will conclude in Paris Saturday with discussions with French President Emmanuel Macron on a wide range of topics, including, of course, the wars in Ukraine and the Israel-Hamas war in the Middle East. June 6th is also the anniversary of the assassination of New York Senator and presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy in California in 1968. Big day in American history. Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., the current independent presidential candidate, released a tribute in a campaign message on X early this morning with some really interesting historic video of his father's campaign from back in the 60s. If you're old enough to remember that, you may want to check it out. If you're a younger American, you may want to check it out as well. President Biden's trip to France could not come at a better time for the Biden administration because the headlines here in the United States are not good. Newsmax senior White House correspondent James Rosen explains.
A story published overnight in the Wall Street Journal reports that lawmakers who met with President Biden to negotiate Ukraine funding in January found him hard to hear, relying on note cards for obvious points, and closing his eyes for so long at one point that the lawmakers wondered whether the chief executive was nodding off. Mr. Biden touched down earlier this morning in Paris, preparing to take part in commemorations of the 80th anniversary of the Allied landing at Normandy in World War II. It is not just the Wall Street Journal report that is dogging him overseas, however, but also his conduct and comments in an interview with Time magazine. In the interview, conducted in the Oval Office May 28 and published yesterday, Time editor-in-chief Sam Jacobs and Washington bureau chief Massimo Calabresi probed the recurrent friction between the president and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, particularly in the latter stages of Israel's war with Hamas in Gaza. Some in Israel, the Time editors noted, have suggested that Netanyahu is prolonging the war for his own political self-preservation. Do you believe that? I'm not going to comment on that, the president said before commenting, there is every reason for people to draw that conclusion. Mr. Biden went on to say whether he, meaning Netanyahu, would change his position or not, it's hard to say, but it has not been helpful. Hours after Time published those comments online, President Biden, having made his announcement of new executive actions at the southwest border, faced a riot of shouted questions in the East Room, in the face of which he ultimately elected to take one question.
Politics with the war. What was that? I asked her, is Prime Minister Netanyahu playing politics with the war? I don't think so. He's trying to work out a serious problem he has. Thank you.
Such a stark divergence in commentary by a sitting president on a major ally all on the same day is noteworthy. In this case, it was accompanied by a visible decline in the president's comportment as observed by one of the Time editors who conducted that interview.
He appears very much as he appears on TV. He is older than when he started in office. It's visible if you just look side by side on the tape. The transcript is a good place for people to go to assess that. We describe it in the piece as well. There's some sort of color description of how he appeared in there.
Yes, the president is older now than he was 4 years ago. Time reporter Massimo Calabresi being gracious and careful not to say anything disparaging about the president and pushing people to go read his interview, which is what writers do, right? That's fine. Thank you, James Rosen, for the reporting. James will appear on multiple Newsmax shows throughout the day with updates from the White House. If the Wall Street Journal and Time magazine are finally being critical of President Biden, you know the jig is up, right? You know it isn't good. For more, we go to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Let's bring in our political panel. Newsmax political analyst Mark Halpern and host of The Briefing, Ed Henry. Wow. This is CNN. I was frankly insulted by CNN, MSNBS, Ed, and the rest of the biased media, pretending that Biden's obvious decline and inability to execute his office was, quote unquote, normal. It's an accommodation that no conservative would ever get, nor should they get. But the left-wing press was willing to sacrifice our nation just to keep the Democrats in power. I don't think the phrase sick and twisted quite covers it, does it?
No, it doesn't. In fairness to the president, though, I think a lot of us are older than we were before. Maybe all of us. And so you're right. Shocking news from CNN. This just in. But you're right. The media was in on it in 2020. They knew that he was headed in this direction, and we'll have some fun with it. But when you read this Wall Street Journal story, it's sad. It's sad that Joe Biden's family is not being honest with the American people. Forget about the president, who appears to be pretty out of it when the Speaker of the House says that he just didn't know his own policy that his administration had just taken action on. Others, as you say, Democrats and Republicans saying he all but fell asleep in a Ukraine meeting. I mean, again, we all get tired. We all make mistakes. But he is the commander in chief. And I have to wonder if some of these Democrats are being truth tellers, or maybe some of them are leaking this out now because they're getting a little tired of this and they're thinking about other options.
And while we're bashing on CNN, oh my gosh, the Wall Street Journal breaking news, Joe Biden's mental decline. I mean, it's like, really, 3.5 years, that's where you are. Great reporting, Wall Street Journal. Meanwhile, Mark, Democrats have wanted another choice for over a year now. We all know this. But those who are ruling in Joe Biden's name, they kind of like the situation. They are now pushing to nominate Biden early to comply with Ohio's laws after their massive screw up there. if they follow the rules, the Democrats are stuck with Biden, are they not?
Chris, in the spirit of full disclosure, I am older than when this segment began. And given the length of Ed's answer, I'm significantly older.
All right, wait a second.
Just kidding. Look, you can look for the marionette strings all you wish. The reason Joe Biden is going to be the nominee, barring a change, the reason he's pushed ahead is he's the incumbent and he wants to stay in the job, and he doesn't think Kamala Harris or any other Democrat would be any stronger against Donald Trump than he would be. In fact, he thinks he'd be the strongest.
Newsmax political analyst Mark Halperin on the Chris Salcedo Show. The president may be right that he is still the strongest candidate they have, unless Michelle Obama shows up, which is what I've been saying from a year ago. Newsmax reporter Mike Carter took to the streets of New York City to see what people are saying about President Biden.
In a recent interview with Time magazine, President Biden says he deserves more credit for the foreign and domestic policy achievements of his administration. So, do Americans agree?
Well, that's what politicians want, is credit.
President Biden says he deserves more credit for some of the achievements of his administration. Does he?
In my opinion, no.
Does he deserve more credit?
Yes, he does. I think he's done a very good job. The stock market's doing well.
Our economy is definitely not better. My mortgage has went up at least 50 to 75%, and I'm a single mother, and it greatly affects me.
Inflation's a problem, but I think it would have been a problem under any president.
With her saying the economy and everything is better, it was far better under President Trump.
And it's hard to look at the positive when everybody is struggling. I mean, I shouldn't be a college graduate debt-free and struggling now than when I was in high school.
Well, I think he would like to think that we were a stronger country, more money in the bank.
Under Biden?
I think he would like to think that.
We have a lot of illegal aliens, and he has done nothing, and he's done nothing for Israel, and he has nothing for the economy.
What achievements has he not gotten credit for?
Yeah, I don't know.
Trump started a lot of the good things for the government overseas and here. And I think Biden sees that his numbers are not that good. So all of a sudden, he's starting to take all this credit.
What are some of the concrete achievements of his administration?
I think he's brought the country closer together.
Has President Biden brought this country together?
I do not feel like it. I feel like we're more divided, especially with the Trump trial that just happened.
In New York, for Newsmax, I'm Mike Carter.
Thank you, Mike. There was clearly one Biden supporter there, right? But most everyone else, not so much. The headlines are equally as bad for the president's son, Hunter Biden, whose trial in Delaware on felony gun charges is continuing. Wednesday, 3 witnesses, including Hunter's ex-wife, testified very colorfully, let's say, describing Hunter's drug use and failed attempts at rehab and the purchase of the firearm in question back in 2018 when his use of crack cocaine was out of control, apparently. An ex-girlfriend testified about Hunter smoking crack every 20 minutes, and that's a quote from her testimony. More from Rob Schmitt.
And it appears more legal trouble is coming for Hunter Biden. Today, the heads of all 3 committees investigating Joe Biden's influence peddling scheme sent criminal referrals to DOJ for Hunter and James Biden for their bold-faced lies under oath in front of Congress. Hunter lying about who he was actually texting when he demanded $5 million from a Chinese energy official while sitting next to his father. They got that money, by the way. Investigators finding Hunter was texting who they thought he was and had been texting that same Chinese energy official for months. That was a lie. Hunter also lying when he said he never worked for Rosemont Seneca Bohai, where Hunter was paid with a Porsche by a businessman in Kazakhstan after Joe Biden had dinner with him at Cafe Milano in D.C. Another lie, and that was also the dinner that got Hunter paid by Russia as well. And as for Jim Biden, the brother, his lie also in reference to China, where the Bidens made millions and then laundered it to every single family member. Jim saying Joe Biden never met with Tony Bobolinsky, Hunter's business partner on the Chinese deals, but then Hunter, under oath, said, oh, yeah, they did meet. Oops. So we have 2 liars here lying about everything that leads investigators to Joe Biden.
Which led to Hunter Biden and Jim Biden, the president's brother, being referred to the DOJ, Department of Justice, for criminal prosecution. Rob spoke about it with Congressman Jim Jordan, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee.
All right, Congressman Jim Jordan joins us tonight. And, sir, it's good to have you back on. All right, so the Bidens have brought in $35 million through influence peddling over these past 10, 15 years, selling Joe Biden's power. We know how they were doing it. You say Joe Biden knew about this. He was engaged in this. He benefited from this as well. You're recommending the DOJ prosecute Hunter and James Biden for lying to Congress to basically conceal this scheme and to conceal Joe's part of this scheme.
Yep. Criminal referral's been sent. We think that makes sense, particularly when you look at some of the things that they said during their depositions. Hunter Biden wasn't, we don't think, clear about his involvement with one of the organizations, one of the companies, of the many companies they formed. And we think that they misled us on meetings that took place, that this whole Milken conference, what they were involved in. Hunter Biden said he had no part of that and didn't meet with certain people there. We got other testimony and evidence that suggests that is just not true. So there are a number of places, and we put this all in our referral, showing where it looks like they weren't straightforward with the Congress, with the committee, and therefore we've sent the criminal referrals.
All right, so they're lying about China. You know, Hunter's lying about the text message to Zhao, where he demanded the millions of dollars that they would get like a week later. James is lying about
Zhao.
Right.
There's another Zhao that was in my phone. You know,
right? Who knows two Zhaos as an American? James Biden is lying about the Bobolinsky meeting with Joe Biden. You know, when Joe was there at the hotel meeting with Tony Bobolinsky, the business partner in China, they took in millions. They laundered it through these shell companies. Now they're lying about it. I mean, doesn't that tell you everything that they want to lie about this story?
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, this whole thing, I was just telling someone this earlier today, their story changes all the time. James Biden's story, Hunter Biden's story, Joe Biden's story, the White House, the David Weiss, who's investigating Hunter Biden, you know, had this long investigation before he's named special counsel. The stories that have never changed are the whistleblowers that came forward and told us what was going on here. So, which sort of prompted all this. Yeah, I mean, a number of times their stories just don't stack up. Again, that's why we sent the criminal referrals.
And right now, we have Peter Navarro sitting in jail right now for simply defying a subpoena from a committee which should have never been given subpoena power in the first place. We have Trump just found guilty of felony counts, 34, because checks that he had signed effectively had the wrong memo line printed on them. If the DOJ ignores this recommendation from the three of you for Hunter and James, I mean, that will again confirm that our entire government, especially the DOJ, has been corrupted by partisanship.
Yeah, this is lawfare. This is the weaponization of government. This is using the law to go after your political opponents. I mean, and example number one, of course, is President Trump. But it's not just President Trump. It's like if you're parents at school board meetings, you need to be investigated. If you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. But President Trump's the best example. Never forget this, Rob. When Fani Willis opens her investigation in February 2021, but she doesn't bring charges until after President Trump announces he's running for president. Alvin Bragg says, I cannot envision a world where I would prosecute Donald Trump and call Michael Cohen as a witness. And yet he does just that after President Trump announces he's running for president. And of course, the Attorney General of the United States doesn't name Jack Smith as special counsel until 3 days after President Trump announced he was going to run for president. This is all driven by politics, and the primary focus is President Trump, but they'll come after any and all of us as well. That's why this is so dangerous and why we want to get back to equal treatment under the law.
Congressman Jim Jordan, chair of the House Judiciary Committee, which is investigating the Biden family on Rob Schmitt Tonight. While reaction and conversation to President Trump's guilty verdict last week continues, Trump did get good news yesterday in the Georgia election interference and racketeering case. An appeals court has halted the Georgia case against Trump and others while it reviews the lower court judge's ruling allowing Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis to remain on the case, which could be really interesting for some of those that already took plea deals. More from Trump attorney Alina Habba on Frontline with Carl Higbie.
Alina, I'm watching this unfold. This broke like right as we were coming on air. This woman is riddled with problems, and I'm not even a legal mind.
No, she's fallen on her fanny since the very beginning. There's the headline for tomorrow, folks. But, no, truly. I mean, number one, this has completely been a disaster. It was a fake case to start with. Her arrogance, her demeanor has been incredibly telling. It's very much the typical coordinated, as we know, as you mentioned earlier in your show, with the Biden administration move. They have these state DAs, AGs coordinating to take down Trump. Well, she just took herself down in the most public display of chaos and disgrace, frankly. So I'm not surprised. The case will not go forward before November now. We do have a stay, which is great. Our team did amazing over there.
Yeah, no, that was a fantastic. And I think they got all the evidence out. But like that judge works in the county that she works in, and he was up for re-election too. So I'm not saying anything, but I might be insinuating that there might have been some reason that he didn't eject her from the case. But
right.
And we were talking about this before. New York City Police Department, they are revoking, now that Donald Trump is convicted as a felon, they're revoking his pistol permit, which I think is a total stunt to throw egg in his face. What say you?
Yeah, I think that all of this is a PR stunt. They try and knock him down. They call up witnesses in trials that are irrelevant to have a good headline, to have a distraction. We've seen it time and time again. And I love the police. I know you do. We love our armed men and women that sacrifice for this country. And I don't blame them. They have to follow protocol. But what the problem is why did we get here? Why did we get to a point where a former president and the likely future president has now been admonished, has now been put in this trial that was a sham for something that nobody else has ever been convicted of, let alone tried for? It's a sad state, like I've said, but New York has completely fallen apart.
Attorney Alina Habba on Frontline with Carl Higbie. That's weekday afternoons, 5 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you check it out. Speaking of New York, 2 police officers were shot by an illegal immigrant or migrant earlier this week. New York Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis is calling out the Biden administration and fellow New York Congresswoman AOC.
You actually sent out a tweet on this very topic you're talking about to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying, hey, baby girl, 2 cops were shot in your district by an illegal immigrant who we now find out is a Venezuelan gang member being housed in a hotel at our constituents' expense, and you still have nothing to say about it? Really? Obviously, off the top, they're referencing that House hearing and the back and forth with Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC. But this is, again, back to your point, a very serious matter happening in your home state.
Yeah, and the person, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who represents the district, who is the queen of defunding the police and open borders, does not get a pass and does not get to stay silent during this time. It is time for everyone to put pressure on our representatives and tell them that enough is enough. The only reason we don't have a dead police officer in New York City again right now is because they had a bulletproof vest. Few inches, that officer would have been dead.
Yeah.
And we cannot keep continuing to take these chances, putting our law enforcement and New Yorkers and fellow Americans like Laken Riley at risk, who are going to die if the president doesn't undo what he did. It's just that simple. All these things about Congress needing to take action, it's nonsense. The president created this mess with 60 executive orders, and he can undo the mess by undoing those executive orders.
Yeah.
That's New York Rep Nicole Malliotakis on Newsmax's national report, which begins at 9 a.m. Eastern, right after Wake Up America. Make sure you keep up to date with all the news all day and night on Newsmax, beginning each and every day with Wake Up America. It's available on most major cable systems like AT&T, Comcast Cable, Cox, Mediacom, Optimum, Suddenlink, Spectrum, Xfinity, and many others, as well as Dish and DirecTV. And make sure you're streaming the new Newsmax Plus. Go to newsmaxplus.com. Get signed up if you haven't already. You can also get a free trial there. It includes all of your favorite shows and hosts like Rob Schmitt, Greg Kelly, The Record with Greta Van Susteren, Frontline with Carl Higbie, Newsline with Bianca De La Garza, and much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Really take in some of the history of today. Enjoy the rest of the day and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
It's our America.
We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.